back in time to Renaissance Italy, but this time we're skipping the pretty paintings and fancy clothes.
Right, we're getting down and dirty in the world of politics.
Where Nicolo Macchiavelli was the ultimate insider.
Ah, Machiavelli. The name itself just oozes with ambition and, well, cunning, doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, his work, Il Principe, which translates to, The Prince, has been stirring up controversy for centuries.
Yeah.
Was it a cynical how-to guide for tyrants, or was it a realistic look at leadership in a world where, frankly, playing nice gets you nowhere?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
In this deep dive, we're using a scholarly introduction to The Prince to kind of set the stage and give us some context.
Right.
I think to really get Machiavelli, we have to understand his world.
Absolutely.
So paint us a picture. What was going on in 16th century Italy that made his ideas, well, so Machiavellian?
Okay, so picture this. Italy wasn't a unified country like it is today.
Right.
It was this chaotic mix of competing states. You had republics like Venice and Florence, duchies like Milan,
Okay.
and right smack in the middle, you had the papal states
Oh, yeah.
throwing their religious power into the mix. It was just constant one-upmanship and broken alliances.
So basically, Italy was the original Game of Thrones,
You got it.
with betrayals and power grabs around every corner.
That's a great analogy.
And Machiavelli wasn't just watching this from afar, was he?
No, not at all. He was a Florentine diplomat, so he was right in the thick of it.
Oh, wow.
He saw rulers rise and fall firsthand.
Yeah.
He even endured imprisonment and torture for his political involvement.
Oh, wow. Talk about trial by fire.
Yeah.
It sounds like his ideas came from real-world experience, not just, ivory tower theorizing.
Exactly. His experiences shaped his thinking. And that brings us to The Prince, which he dedicated to Lorenzo de' Medici, the Duke of Urbino.
Okay, now that's an interesting choice.
It is.
Why dedicate a book about power to someone known for being, shall we say, less than gentle?
Well, Machiavelli saw potential in Lorenzo.
Okay.
He believed that Lorenzo could unify Italy and bring order to all the chaos. The Prince was like a roadmap to achieve that.
So it wasn't just theoretical. It was a practical guide for a ruler with a very specific goal in mind.
That's right.
What kind of advice did it contain?
Well, let's just say some of it might raise a few eyebrows even today.
Okay.
Machiavelli argued that a ruler can't always be bound by morality. Sometimes you have to be willing to break promises, use deception, even be ruthless to maintain stability and achieve those goals.
That's what gives Machiavelli his reputation, right?
Yeah.
The ends justify the means philosophy.
Precisely. But it's important to understand that he wasn't promoting cruelty for its own sake.
Right.
His point was that in a world full of ambitious and often treacherous people, a ruler needs to be prepared to play the game even if the rules are a little dirty.
Yeah, it sounds like The Prince forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about power, especially back then. So was Machiavelli truly a cynic, or was there something more to his thinking?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one that we're going to delve into further as we explore the nuances of his ideas.
Okay.
There's a lot more to uncover beneath the surface.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've established that Machiavelli wasn't afraid to, endorse more pragmatic approach to leadership.
Right.
But I'm sensing it goes deeper than just saying, break a promise, no big deal.
Oh, absolutely. One of Machiavelli's key insights was the importance of popular support.
Yeah.
Even a ruler who, sometimes uses unsavory tactics, still needs the backing of the people to truly succeed.
That makes sense. So it's not just about brute force. There's a social element to maintaining power.
Precisely. He argues that a wise prince avoids being hated by the populace.
Oh.
Even if power is acquired through less than noble means, keeping the people content is vital for holding on to it.
Makes you think of that saying, you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Yeah, a ruler who's constantly facing revolts isn't going to get very far.
Exactly. And Machiavelli wasn't just theorizing here either.
Right.
He used historical examples to back up his points,
Okay.
drawing on everything from ancient Rome to the Italian city-states that he witnessed himself.
It's always so fascinating to see how those historical parallels play out.
It is.
Can you give us a specific example?
Sure. One that stands out is his advice on handling conquered territories.
Okay.
Machiavelli argued against destroying conquered cities because their resources would ultimately benefit the ruler.
Okay.
He used the Roman conquest of Carthage as a cautionary tale.
Uh-huh.
Rome destroyed Carthage completely, and later, when they needed grain, they had nowhere to turn.
Ah, so it's not just about winning the battle. It's about what you do afterward.
Right.
There's a long-term strategy involved.
Exactly. Machiavelli believed that imposing your will on a newly conquered land was rarely effective.
Okay.
Instead, a ruler must understand the existing customs, the power structures, even the psychology of the conquered people.
It's almost like a cultural sensitivity guide for conquerors.
Yeah.
Not exactly what you'd expect from someone with Machiavelli's reputation.
Right. It shows how carefully he thought about these issues.
Yeah.
Machiavelli wasn't promoting blind ambition. He was analyzing the complexities of power with this keen eye for strategy.
Okay.
And this is where another one of his key points comes in.
Okay.
His thoughts on different types of troops.
Oh, this should be interesting.
Yeah.
What did he have to say about building an army?
Well, Machiavelli believed that relying solely on mercenaries was a recipe for disaster. Imagine you're a ruler and you hire this band of mercenaries to fight your battles.
Okay.
They're only loyal to whoever pays them the most.
Right.
Their commitment to your cause, not so much.
Sounds like a risky move.
It is.
I mean, they could switch sides at any moment and leave you completely vulnerable.
Exactly. Machiavelli saw this happen time and again in the Italian city-states.
Yeah.
They relied heavily on these fickle mercenaries, and they were constantly undermined by shifting alliances and betrayals. It made them weak and open to attack from, stronger powers.
So what was the alternative?
Yeah.
How do you create an army that you can actually trust?
Well, Machiavelli argued that the best armies are made up of your own citizens.
Okay.
People who have a stake in defending their homeland.
Right.
They're more loyal, they're more motivated, and ultimately more effective because they're fighting for something bigger than just a paycheck.
Yeah, it's like the difference between a hired gun and someone defending their own family.
Exactly.
The level of commitment just isn't the same.
Exactly. So now, centuries later, the question remains, are Machiavelli's ideas still relevant?
Right.
Can we learn anything from a thinker who navigated a world seemingly so different from our own?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does the prince have anything to say to us in the 21st century?
Well, some argue that Machiavelli's work is a product of its time, applicable to Renaissance Italy, but not so much to the modern world with, its different values.
Right.
However, others point out that human nature hasn't really changed that much. Power struggles, ambition, the desire for influence.
Yeah.
These are timeless themes.
So even though the context might be different, the underlying principles of power dynamics, understanding motivations, the need for both strength and strategy, those are still relevant.
They are. That's why the prince is still studied in boardrooms and political science classes, even military academies.
Wow.
It offers this fascinating glimpse into the timeless game of power.
It sounds like there are lessons there for everyone, not just aspiring princes.
Right.
What can those of us who aren't running countries or companies, what can we take away from Machiavelli?
Well, Machiavelli would likely encourage us to be keen observers of the world around us. Power dynamics exist in every sphere of life,
Right.
from personal relationships to international affairs. It's about being aware of the game, even if we're not trying to rule the world.
So it's about being informed and strategic, recognizing that even well-intentioned people might need a little cunning to navigate certain situations.
Yeah.
We might not be facing down rival warlords, but we all encounter our own Machiavellian moments.
Exactly. And that's why his work continues to fascinate and provoke.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront the realities of power, the choices we make, and the consequences that follow.
Right.
We might not all be princes, but we can all learn from the prince.
I think this deep dive has definitely changed my perception of Machiavelli.
Yeah.
He's more than just a cynical schemer.
Right.
He's a complex thinker with a lot to teach us.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I have one last question.
Okay.
If Machiavelli were alive today,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think he'd be doing?
Oh, wow.
Would he be advising world leaders, writing best-selling business books, or maybe even hosting his own podcast?
Now, that's a thought.
Yeah.
I could see him as a political strategist whispering in the ears of presidents, a social media influencer distilling his wisdom into, viral tweets.
Yeah.
Or maybe even as a tech CEO, mastering the art of modern power dynamics.
Yeah, he certainly wouldn't shy away from shaking things up and challenging our assumptions.
Absolutely not.
All right.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the possibilities.
Okay.
But don't go anywhere just yet.
Okay.
We have one final thought-provoking point to discuss in our last segment of this deep dive into Machiavellian Italy.
So welcome back to our deep dives into the world of Machiavelli and Renaissance Italy. We've been exploring his ideas about power, leadership, and, those tough choices that rulers have to face.
Right.
But the question remains, was Machiavelli a cynic who advocated for tyranny, or was there something more to his thinking?
It's really the heart of the debate surrounding Machiavelli, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it'll likely continue as long as people are, still studying his work.
His advice in The Prince can seem, pretty ruthless on the surface.
Yeah.
Deception, breaking promises, even violence. I mean, it's easy to think he's endorsing some pretty dark stuff.
It's true. It's not exactly a guide to ethical leadership by today's standards.
Right.
But we have to remember that Machiavelli was writing in a very specific historical context.
Of course.
16th century Italy was chaotic.
Yeah.
It was a free-for-all of competing states and ambitious rulers.
Yeah.
Survival often meant making tough decisions, the kind that we might question today.
So could you say he was just being a realist?
Yeah.
Offering practical advice for a world that wasn't playing by the same rules as we do now?
That's one interpretation.
Okay.
Machiavelli had experienced firsthand the consequences of weakness and indecision.
Right.
He knew that in a world full of wolves, sometimes you have to be a wolf to survive.
Yeah.
But there's also his dedication of the prince to Lorenzo de' Medici.
Right.
Remember, Machiavelli saw Lorenzo as someone who could potentially unify Italy
Yes.
and bring stability.
Right.
Could there have been a glimmer of idealism there?
That's an interesting point. I mean, wouldn't unifying Italy and creating peace be a good thing, even if the methods were sometimes morally ambiguous?
It's certainly possible. Machiavelli believed that strong leadership was essential for a stable society, especially in a chaotic environment like 16th century Italy.
Yeah.
Perhaps he saw Lorenzo as a chance to create a better, more unified and prosperous Italy, even if the path to get there wasn't always paved with, good intentions.
It's a fascinating contrast.
Yeah.
A book often viewed as a handbook for ruthless ambition might have actually been motivated by a desire for peace.
It highlights the complex nature of Machiavelli's thinking.
Yeah.
He doesn't offer easy answers.
Right.
He makes us grapple with those difficult questions about power and leadership. Questions like, can a ruler be both effective and ethical? Can we achieve good outcomes using methods we might consider unethical?
Those are questions we still grapple with today, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Not just in politics, but in our personal lives, too.
Yeah.
I mean, do we always stick to our principles? Or are there times when the ends justify the means?
Exactly. And that's why Machiavelli's work continues to resonate centuries later.
Yeah.
He challenges us to think critically about how power works, the choices we make, and the consequences that follow.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Machiavellian Italy, we're left with this final thought-provoking idea. Machiavelli believed that a ruler couldn't always afford to be good. But could his advice be used for good? Or does it inherently lead to corruption? That's something for you to ponder as you navigate your own world.
Keep those Machiavellian insights in mind, because sometimes understanding the darker side of human nature and the dynamics of power can be the key to achieving positive outcomes. You never know when a little bit of cunning might help you achieve a greater good.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, the world is full of intrigue, just like the world Machiavelli inhabited centuries ago.